This video is part of the Simon Says video podcast with my interview with Steve Garvey, and we're about to go through the moving image dashboard where they look through the top 100 UK brands and look at their Instagram and LinkedIn videos that they post. If you want to watch the whole podcast, I'll put the link here and in the description.
So this is obviously, there's a million ways of looking at data, as we've already said. The point is to understand from the start what you want to learn out of it. Let's focus first of all on the effectiveness of video. And from that, you also get effective use of budget. If you follow the original Ian Ogilvy comic back in the 1950s, I think it was, that I know that half of my advertising budget is wasted, but I don't know which half. You could, broadly speaking, apply the same or something similar to your video budget. If you're not really measuring whether it works or not, how do you know whether it's worth investing in? So what we normally find with clients is that they change the way that they do their productions. They may end up spending less money on video, but typically that's not the outcome. What they normally do is they change the way they invest in video to make it much more effective. So this is one way that you can achieve this. There are many others which are data driven, but this is an easy one to access. So this is one of our reference data sets. As you mentioned, Simon, we primarily do Instagram and LinkedIn.
So this is on your...
This is on our platform, yeah.
This is your platform which you've built?
Yeah, this is. This has taken about 2 years to build. The build of it has taken that long for the simple process that first we need to work out what we're trying to achieve with it. Secondly, we had to test it. And then we had to make it as automated as possible. So the aim here is to produce something which gives you really valuable tools, but which does not cost the earth, because we know brands are not going to spend a fortune on video measurement unless they can see huge value in it. And then the way to demonstrate the value is to enable them to access really effective tools without spending a fortune. So this is what we've built here. So we've only started to show this publicly in the past few months because we wanted to be absolutely sure it works, and we're now confident it does. So what you can see here, just a very quick summary. This is our 100 brands on LinkedIn in the second quarter of 2022. So 3 months worth of data. We track 100 UK brands. We track the same brands on LinkedIn and on Instagram. And when we do those, we track every post that they make of all media types, and when we break them down into different media types, either image, text, or video. Now, the one that we're looking at here is LinkedIn, and at the moment we've got four widgets across the top, which are some of the headlines that people like to see. The first one is who got the most reactions for LinkedIn videos, bearing in mind that LinkedIn reactions are pretty much all positive. There aren't any negative ones on LinkedIn, so all these reactions are going to be positive. And GSK won that with a fraction, with only 1 under 42,000 reactions over the course of April, May, and June of 2022. EY were the most active, posting a lot of videos, 59. The average per brand posted per month is 5.4, so a little over 1 video per week. And the green widget there is Ineos Automotive. One thing that interests us a lot is, it's great if you're GSK or EY, you've got a lot of followers, or in fact, if you're Unilever, you've got a huge number of followers on LinkedIn, but maybe that just means that the absolute number that you get of positive reactions is just because you've got a lot of followers. Maybe it's only a very small percentage of them. So we also measure the reactions per 1,000 followers with video. And here we see Ineos Automotive getting 142 per 1,000, which is pretty huge when you think that 14% of their audience will give them a positive reaction over the course of the quarter. So those are the main widgets that come out of that. We've then got some tables and charts that go into a little bit more detail below. I won't try and go through all of those now, but I will just show one as a little example. So what we're going to do is we're going to just pop out this particular one because I think it shows a couple of interesting points. And this is reactions compared to followers, developing that point that I just mentioned. So this is all of our 100 brands plotted on a bubble chart, and the size of the bubble is relative to the size of their following. So this giant bubble down here is LinkedIn, as I just mentioned. They've got 17 million followers, or they did at the end of June. Anyway, they had 17 million followers. Now, if you look at these two axes, here we have total reactions. And over here, we've got reactions per 1,000 followers. So we can see that certain brands do really well on getting more reactions than others. Here's EY. They do really well, post a lot of videos, but that generates a very high number of total reactions. And then also, if we go here to Monzo, they do really well with total number of reactions too. But if we do it per 1,000 followers, you end up with a rather different picture. You still get Monzo standing out there. But you've also got down here, way over at the far side, you've got Lansec, who've only got a pretty small following, 18,000, but they did get a lot of reactions per follower out of this particular season. Now, we would argue that ideally, as a brand, you'd want to be somewhere around there in the top right-hand side, which is a high number of total reactions and a high number of reactions per video. But you can see that the vast majority of brands are way over here. What does that tell you? It tells you that really, in comparison to the best performers, most brands don't do that well. We would probably like to see more of an even spread across this bubble chart. But the fact is that, in terms of reactions per 1,000 followers, there's a bit of a gap there. So that's 21 or 22, I think, over to the right of where my cursor is at the moment. And that is and these are the good performers who are getting over about 120 reactions per 1,000. And then everybody else, particularly the ones over in this end, are not doing particularly well with the size of the audience that they've got per follower. And I think this is probably one of the reasons for this is they're probably not measuring results. They're probably just posting video, seeing what happens, maybe talking about number of reactions or number of views they've got on LinkedIn, and not going into it in any more detail. They're not feeding that back into saying, well, are we making the right kinds of videos? Is there a point to doing this? And so on and so forth. I should add one other point. This isn't critical of any brand because, of course, we don't know what their brand strategy is. So EY post a load of videos, but I don't know, perhaps their strategy. And by the way, if I did know what EY's strategy was, I wouldn't say it in public unless they give me freedom to do so. But maybe their strategy is always to be in the timeline. And in total, they do get a very large number of reactions. So we're looking here at one particular way of viewing the data. This is actually for all content, for all types of post. We can also filter this so that we do it just for the videos. But the point I really wanted to make here is that probably this chart shows you that there's about 20, it's roughly speaking the usual 80-20 rule, where about 20% of your sample are doing substantially better than all the others. And so, of course, those are the ones that we're looking at over on the right-hand side to try to figure out why the likes of Monzo up there or Aston Martin Lagonda are doing well. Of course, Aston Martin Lagonda have got a very desirable product, but is there something else about the way they do it? Because there are some brands in the rest of this chart which have really desirable products too, and they're not doing as well as Aston Martin Lagonda. So we tend to focus on those to look at best practice, then we feed that back in to the strategy questions.
I know people might not want to talk about strategy, but it's really important, I think, to create content for your audience, depending on what platform they're on. So I guess the ideal is if you, doesn't really matter, obviously, if you've got a large audience like Unilever or EY, you can post a lot of content and you will get a number of reactions. But what I like about the smaller brands is not such a big audience, but they're getting a lot of engagement. And I guess that's what you really want to do. Depending on the size of your audience, you want to make sure that they're engaging with your content. Now, whether that be video, image, or even written posts. I mean, in terms of, let's talk about LinkedIn for a moment, is, what are the trends of LinkedIn? Is video effective on LinkedIn? I guess most brands should have a strategy of posting sort of multiple types of content. But what are you seeing with video, particularly on LinkedIn?
What we're seeing is that video is effective on LinkedIn, and here's a little chart to demonstrate that, just to pick up on that particular point you just mentioned, Simon. So here you can see that in comparison to images, we're getting more average reactions per video, about 85 in comparison to about 62 for images. Now, this is this particular quarter, and it changes from quarter to quarter, but I don't think we've ever had a quarter where images get higher reaction per post than videos do across the average. Of course, the total amount, which is the blue, is going to be bigger for images than it is for videos, because people post a lot more images than they do videos. So video is, and by that metric, it's reasonable to assume, I wouldn't apply like a percentage by which video is, as it were, more effective than images. But what we do see consistently, and I think without exception across all the data that we've ever seen, is that video gets a higher number of reactions on LinkedIn, for example, this is true on others too, than images do across all the social media platforms that we've looked. One of the anomalies here, which we don't show on this, is that we have the change of engagement between text and videos and images. One of the strange things is that text-only posts do surprisingly well on LinkedIn. I don't really know why that is. They typically perform about as well as video does. I've no idea why that would happen to be the case. We've never looked into it, but there are very few text posts, because normally people feel they have to post an image or a video. So in terms of the trends, yeah, definitely video is more effective. I think video can typically justify the additional budget that it normally costs. But we do think that we aren't here to persuade people, as I mentioned earlier, to use video more, but we also think, and this is quite a good example here in the bubble chart that I just mentioned now, is that this chart suggests that not many brands are using measurement on their LinkedIn posts. We see this on videos as well as across all content here. We see a similar spread of bubbles when we do this for the video only posts. In terms of the video trends generally, it varies from platform to platform. We're talking here about LinkedIn, and I'm just going to show you this particular table, because this one is all about video, and I think you just mentioned there some of the smaller brands. So I'm just going to show you here. These are the high ranking ones in terms of video effectiveness. So this comes back to the trends point of view. I think the main trend that you see about LinkedIn is that LinkedIn is a fantastic way to pull together a professional community who are big fans of the work that you do. So if you look at the brands here who are in, say, the top 5, you've got Ineos Automotive, Parkinson's UK, Tokamak Energy, who are a startup business who are developing nuclear fusion, Oxford Nanopore and Alzheimer's in the UK. So those top 5 get more reactions per video than the other 95 brands in our sample. And with all those, I think they all have very strong brand loyalty with their audiences. In the case of Tokamak and Oxford Nanopore, it's people who love science. When you look at the comments that come up in their posts, they're very much driven by other professional scientists and researchers. Obviously, Parkinson's and Alzheimer's have a very strong and passionate following because of the charitable work they do. And Ineos Automotive and Aston Martin, who are in 6th place, have an extremely desirable product for their particular audience. So you can see there that they do much better than more generalist brands. So LinkedIn is a really good place to attract that devoted professional audience. And if anything, we've seen that get reinforced over the pandemic for the simple reason that people are spending more time on LinkedIn and therefore more likely to follow the brands that they really like. But these brands are doing really, really well with video. I mean, if you're getting, over 30 reactions per 1,000 typically with your video, then you're absolutely in the top 10%.
Oh, wow. Yeah, so just to say that video does work if you're consistent with it, and also posting content which is relevant and interest to your audience as well. So it doesn't matter, you don't have to be the big brands to sort of smash it. On LinkedIn, it's all about creating content which is going to resonate and engage with your audience. Yeah, this is amazing. I'm sure we could talk for hours on digging deeper into data, and I'm sure you do spend a lot of time analyzing this. I'm just, trying to wrap things up here. I mean, so what is your biggest tips, or what brands should be doing now when it comes to creating video content?
I think the number one thing that brands should be doing is being aware of the effectiveness of the work that they do. And this is not said from the point of view of someone who's trying to persuade you that it is effective. You just need to do that initial benchmarking first. You need to take a really serious look at what works and what doesn't. Now, the thing is that within the business, everyone who works in comms or in brand marketing is familiar with the scenario where a senior figure within the business will approach you directly, or one of their team will approach you and say, we need a video next week. It's not your fault that you have to deal with the consequences of that. Now, that results in a very fast production process where there's little time to think about anything. What we're suggesting here is to have a bedrock of measurement and understanding so that you have a simple strategy that says, yeah, we can deal with that. Yeah, we can deal with that, and it fits into our strategy this way. Here are some things that we need to do with this particular piece of content that you want me to make by next week, for example. So in other words, rather than being a slightly more scattergun approach is, well, what can we do with this story? It's what can we do with this story using video in the context of what we already know and understand about a particular platform that we're thinking of using. And that's where the measurement in the background constantly humming along really, really works. It saves you a load of time, it will save you budget, and it will mean that it's less of a panic, if I can say that when you get that call or when you get that visit, someone coming up to your desk to ask you for that urgent turnaround job, you can be much more chilled about how you're going to respond to it.
So that was just part of the interview I did with Steve Garvey. You can watch the whole podcast here. So thanks for watching. There are many other episodes in the Simon Says video series where we take a deep dive on how you can be using video content to grow your business.